Here we go. In today's video, we're going to mash up two different segments of our videos. One, listener questions. Two, Whiteboard Wednesday when it's not Wednesday and not really even a listener in this case. On Twitter, I saw this question come across my radar. Matt Lady asks, all right, Sunday Tweeps, why doesn't podcast not have segments like email lists do yet? Do I really need to make 3 shows or just have multiple different types of episode styles in one show in hopes just to skip the ones they may not like? Now, this is a question that I get a lot in many different forms. But arguably, it's like, hey, how do I get people to listen to the episodes that I want them to listen to? How do I do that? Well, first, we have to zoom out as content creators and just take a look at what we want to do. Do we want to have this one podcast that is almost like a variety of shows where we know we have like this general audience and we cover many different topics? Or, as Matt suggests to his own answer, is do I have to create 3 hyper-specific shows? And largely, it depends on how much time and resources you have. If you really want to focus in on 3 specific topics and you want to make sure that you have engaged listeners through every individual show, you'd have to make 3 individual shows. Question is, do you want to do that publicly? I'm going to show you today how we handle this at Castos through our private podcasting features and sneak in a little sneak preview, which is, depending on when you watch this video, it's either going to come in a couple of days or it's already here. But you have to just zoom out as a creator and ask yourself, what do I want to create? How do I want to spend my time? And how much time do I have to create all of this content? 2, you have to put your listener hat on, just like myself. There are shows that I listen to regularly, which I do cherry pick and skip, depending on the title, depending on the topic. Do I want to consume this content? Do I want to listen for a half an hour, or do I want to go on and move on to something else? So you have to also realize that we'll never get 100% listenership. That'd be awesome if we did. But you should know that people will be skipping around, even if you created hyper-specific shows. But if you've come across this question in your own head before, and you've asked yourself the same thing that Matt has asked, why doesn't this happen? Let's just dive in to the podcast industry at large with our whiteboard. So let's say that you are looking and hosting your podcast here at Castos. You have your podcast here. You have all your MP3 files in our hosting account. We create the RSS feed, and the RSS feed acts as that business card to go out to places like Apple and Spotify and say, hey, our podcast is right here at Castos. Here's all the files. Here's the information. Here's the cover art. And then Apple, Spotify, Google, maybe your website helps distribute this out to various podcast apps throughout the world. People can listen to it on their default podcast app on Google, on Apple, or they're using things like Overcast or Castro, whatever it is. They can listen to it on any podcast app in the world, and that's what makes podcasting great. We have this open distribution system, and it gets to our listener. Our listener is happy, but we don't know who this listener is once it goes out into the world. Now, if you have your podcast on Apple or Spotify, there are ways to get that information if they're listening to your podcast in the closed source, in the Apple Podcast, in the Google Podcast, in the Spotify Podcast app, because it's self-contained, and Apple and these larger players can monitor and track that information. It still doesn't answer Matt's question on Twitter is, should I be creating separate shows? What you can do here at Castos is set up 3 different private podcasts. And you could set up show 1, 2, and 3. And then inside Castos, you could put in MP3 files to create your shows. And I'm just going to fill this in. And each show could have a playlist of shows. Zoom out for a second and put your creator hat on. This is not going to be your variety show. This is probably, your strategy probably won't be, I'm going to publish to these shows every single week, unless you have the time and the resources to do that. But you might make hyper-specific shows. So we talk about podcasting here a lot at the Audience Podcast. So we could have a show just about microphones. We could have a show just about marketing. And we could have a show just about e-commerce, right? You have to take payments if you want to make money as a creator. We could create these hyper-specific shows and put maybe our best work into those shows. You could take shows from your generic, openly available variety show and put them into one of these verticals, or you could spend time creating unique content for these verticals. And then your user can subscribe to these shows at Castos. You can hook it up to your website. You can hook it up to a form. You can connect it up with a tool like Zapier. And for those of you, this is the big secret, the big reveal that's coming this week. If you're using something like a ConvertKit that has the methodology of segments, we are building out or rolling out a native integration into ConvertKit with more to come, more apps in the future. So depending on when you're watching this, it's either already available or coming soon. And then you can roll out these individual private podcasts. This is getting to be a messy chart to segments of your ConvertKit email list. Somebody signs up to that marketing email list, they'll get just a private podcast just with all of your marketing episodes. You might create a segment for just microphones. And if you did that, all of your listeners would get their the microphone episode playlist delivered to either a Castos app that they can listen to on their mobile device, or they could listen to it in any of their favorite podcast apps that they already use by adding your RSS feed into those apps. So, boy, private podcast, you can really do anything with it once you start to segment it out. You zoom out. As a creator, where do I want to spend time creating? Do I want to just do this larger variety show where I have this generic audience and I know they'll be skipping around and you'll have to manually set up other types of hooks to get them really interested in other content? Or do you want to set up some private shows that you can market to that individual audience member or give them the choice to pick which one they want and allow them to create content or consume content that way? Private podcasts with automation, starting with ConvertKit, coming soon or already here at Castos.com. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. Matt, if you're listening or watching, I hope that solves or at least points you in a different direction for at least here at Castos with Private Podcasting. Thumbs up if you like the video. Subscribe to the channel if you want more. We'll see you in the next video.